Kiss My Chaos, taking stories of trauma into triumph while living life in the middle and everything in between. All views are expressed solely of the host, guests, and for entertainment purposes only. You don't like it? Well, you can kiss our chaos. Here are your hosts, Abigail Dark and DT Hudson.
Hey everybody, it's DT Hudson here with the Halloween Scream Queen, the one, the only, Miss Abigail. Welcome to the Kiss My Chaos podcast.
Hey, here we are, out of nowhere.
How did we start this?
It was your idea.
I don't think it was my idea. I think it was yours. Wasn't it?
Only because I talked about podcasting in the beginning, like a long time ago. But out of nowhere, you sent a text like, hey, you want to do a podcast? And that's how it began. I saved the text.
He has proof.
I'm smart enough to save text with Abby.
I think it's from when I badgered you about your book. When you told me you wrote a book, I'm like, wow, he's important. He wrote a book. This is really cool.
Not important.
I should read it.
Not important. Not important.
No, but with reading it's interesting because we don't realize how many people we meet and know that all have a story. And I think that was the main reason why we were like, I want to hear everyone's story. I want to hear how they got from trauma to triumph. How did they overcome and how did they become better than the day before?
Yeah, no, not only that. It's local people. I mean, there are people obviously all over, but the amount of stories, the amount of talent just in the local area here, all you have to do is ask or listen, and it's there, whether you're going out to listen to music at a venue or a poet speaking their poetry. It's quite amazing the amount of talent right in your own backyard.
Yeah, I think I just got sick of, like, when you're talking to people, like, especially in the Midwest, it's raining out today. How's the weather? Oh, got sunshine. When you're talking with people, like, even in line, I was in line the other day, and I just started talking to this guy, and he started diving into, like, his childhood and, like, where he came from and why he was there and, like, why this was so important to him. And I started thinking, like, why not have meaningful conversations with people as opposed to, like, just tipping the part of the iceberg.
Well, do you think maybe, like, some of that is culture, though? I mean,
true.
The stoicism of Scandinavians, and Germans, that's about as stoic as you get, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's raining out. I got 3/10 of rain this week, with the accent. But, I think that's a lot of what we're trying to do here is overcome the stigma of individuals or even families that have experienced these types of things and maybe didn't even realize the profound effect it had on them later in life or was having on them directly at that time.
Right, and I think bringing it out to the forefront and having people express what happened to them and hopefully, like, as we continue to do this, which we hope to continue to do this
I'm gonna.
To get it out there so people can understand how did that person get over that and how do we get more people involved? How do we tell our story? Because you have a story, I have a story, everybody has a story. And speaking of that, like, we'll just kind of like dive into yours just a little bit. So tell me a little bit about your, like, PTS Me book.
Oh, so the PTS Me book is something I never wanted to do.
Really?
Yeah, I never wanted to do it. I had kept a small journal of events that had happened throughout my career and my life. And the whole goal was to reach out to first responders, emergency room nurses, firefighters, anybody who may experience the things that we try and protect others from, for funny stories. Because it was a time of just before George Floyd, and it was more, the goal was to be an education to the public, like, hey, this is a complete subculture, and this is why they talk the way they do. Their humor's a little more dark. It's a coping tool, It was for me anyway. So I reached out to everyone I knew, and they thought it was a brilliant idea. And it stemmed back from college because I read a book called The Thin Blue Line, and it followed 4 or 5 officers from the academy all the way into the street. And it really inspired me to just start writing things down. So I did. And when I reached out to all these people, they're like, yeah, I'll provide you a story here and there. And it was just going to be a conglomeration. And I never got one. So I gave it about a month. And I reached back out and like, yep, we'll do it. Never got one. So much like you, it's like, well, I'll just do it myself then. And I started writing it. And after about the first 2 paragraphs, I'm like, this is very hard. And now I understand why I never got one. Not one story. Because there's this intimate process when you're sitting with a piece of paper and a pen or a computer with a blinking cursor staring back at you. It's just you and your thoughts. And sometimes that can be very uncomfortable and a little bit terrifying because you're reliving some things you probably didn't want to relive. So I went through the process and pushed through it, and I typed quickly. So I just started writing, and I started with my childhood. And I did that intentionally because I come from a little farm 7 miles west of the largest town of 103 people at the time. And the point of doing that was 100% intentional to say, hey, if this can happen to this farm kid from the middle of nowhere, it can happen to anyone. It doesn't care what color you are, what race you are, what religion you are, what political affiliation you are. It doesn't care. It's indiscriminate. It couldn't care less. And it did happen. So I started writing, and I wrote, and I had to get a lot of permission from people. I changed names of
Sure.
the characters, so to speak, in the book, with the exception of myself. And I started with childhood. And I tell you what, I started remembering some very erroneous details that I wouldn't even have thought. I mean, things that weren't even really that important. And realizing, it's kind of messed up at like 8 and 9 years old that you're driving your great uncle back from a cancer treatment because he's too tired to drive. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but there I did it. And I think the statute of limitations have run, so you can't cite me now. But I have no regrets, none whatsoever. So that's where the book came about.
Well, it created the person you are today. And coming from somebody like my brother's in law enforcement, so, but he's been out of the house, so I didn't get to experience anything that he's gone through personally with him. So, like, with the stigma of after the George Floyd, I think it's a really good book for a lot of people to read because I think we forget what law enforcement goes through and like what they deal with on a daily basis. We don't realize what you guys do, men and women. And the trauma that happens with it. Like, we might experience one situation in our life where we come across like a really horrible accident, or we see something that maybe we shouldn't have seen or became a part of, and that screws us up. I can't imagine like people possibly going to work that morning and being like, well, I'm going to go through multiple situations in a day. So like, as far as some of the ones that you described in there, what do you think was the hardest one that you had to like go through that you were like, man, I forgot that happened?
So it's interesting you bring up, man, I forgot that happened, because I had something weird happen just last year, and it was between my brother and I. One of the most profound ones was almost getting killed by the train, pushing a guy off the train tracks that was suicidal. But after going through that, I didn't really think much about it and didn't understand any of this, why my heart was beating so fast, why I couldn't sleep. I couldn't understand any of this, where I was forgetting and I couldn't remember the details. And that's what I made my living on, remembering details and facts. And I will tell you, the people I worked with, the last thing in the world they wanted to do was have to draw a firearm and use it. That was, I mean, let's get rid of that right now. that is a horrible, horrible thing. And have I drawn my firearm? Yes, I think most do at some point, not
Right.
just to clear it. But you don't want to do it. Are there people out there that may and think differently? Probably. I don't know. I'm speaking for myself. I can tell you the people I worked with, it's like it's the last thing in the world that you would ever want to have happen. You just don't want to have to bear that, and you don't want to have to put that on someone else either. It's but if you're doing it to protect someone, yes, I totally get that. So it's I don't think there's a win in a situation like that. But the weird thing that happened that you brought up earlier was I was at my niece's graduation in Omaha, Nebraska, Gretna, Nebraska, actually. And we were talking about, my brother was talking about, I was like, hey, you remember when you jumped in front of that train? You know, he's very blunt. And I'm like, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I do. He goes, you remember you came out to my place and stayed there? I'm like, I don't remember any of that. And then all of a sudden I started to remember it just a little bit. And it's like, I did. And I go, I did. He goes, yeah, I was sheetrocking my basement and you laid down on the couch. And he's like, you want me to stop? And I'm like, no, I'm fine. Because I wasn't sleeping. I was just like resting my eyes like a 6-year-old. I'm not sleeping. I'm resting my eyes. I remember it now. I did. And why did I do that? Well, I think I went to family. And
Sure.
I don't why. And it's clear to me now. It makes perfect sense of the person I know I am that I went to family. But also, after completing therapy later on in life, I started remembering erroneous details. I can tell you what song was on the radio. I mean, it's not important at all, but it encourages me because now I can remember some of these details after you start to process it and go through it. It was profound.
Right.
I had it's a book, so you can't put everything in there, and I don't really like telling war stories a whole lot because I've spent my whole life trying to protect people from having to see it.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, whether you be an emergency room nurse, firefighter, law enforcement officer, paramedic, I think that's exactly what everybody tries to do. And you don't need to be in these professions to experience these things like you were describing. Mm-hmm. And you can't compare them.
Like fight or flight mode, you know, I think the adrenaline comes and pumps in and like protects your brain from going into that mode of like, I'm not going to do this. I'm too afraid. Like, I can't do it, where your body just takes over and you just did it. Like, I think in your book it says something where the other guy was like, why did you do that? Like, you could have been killed, but you didn't think about that.
Yeah, it was a little more blunt. He called me stupid.
Okay,
and he's probably right.
I was being nice.
You know,
I was trying to be nice about it.
When I was at the police department, we had this weird dynamic of very old school detectives and officers who did things the old school way. We had us, the newer people, who were very aggressive, and then we had the very, very new people who didn't say anything. So being in the middle at that point, the old school people, they have no time for this. They would call you dumb, stupid, what were you doing? Don't do that, you're an idiot. But, you know, if you think about it in hindsight, maybe they're right, I don't know. But if you think about it in hindsight, do you do what you did by pushing a guy off the train tracks, or do you stand and watch a person commit suicide? You're not winning. This is a no-win situation, mentally.
Right. And I know you won't say it, but it was a heroic action for somebody that, like, you didn't take the time to think, like, I'm going to protect myself, and, like, you know, that was this guy's decision, you know, tough shit type of thing. You were like, nope, this is what I do. I'm going to give this guy another chance.
And maybe that's ignorance on my part, but in the same token, would I do the same thing again? I don't know. I think I would be untruthful if I would say I'd do the same thing. I would like to think I would do the right thing, and it ultimately, I think, was the right thing. I'll stand by that. I swore an oath to protect people, whether they wanted to. I was in a fight for my life after I hit that guy. He wanted to die. He wanted my gun. He wanted to die, and I did not want any of that to happen. And especially fighting with me. What happens, you know, when a train goes by you, and it attributes to a lot of individuals who are intoxicated or on maybe some type of narcotic, how they get hit by trains is there's a vacuum and it sucks you towards the train. And a lot of people don't know that because it disrupts the atmosphere and causes a swirl. Well, these jagged rocks and concrete and pavement, and now you're being sucked towards this thing while you're trying to, fight for your life. And I do remember some of that. There are still pieces of that I don't. Like from point A to point B, couldn't tell you. I do remember looking to the right, and the last thing I see is a big white light, thinking I'm not going to make it.
Right.
And I will tell you, the individual that was in the car with me, the other officer, was in the passenger seat. So him having to run around the hood of the car was the difference of him having to stop. And that's the only measure I have of it.
And you said afterwards, like you had just remembered having family.
Yeah.
Which I think in my head, looking at it from like an outsider perspective, do you think it's because, I mean, obviously I know your wife, and I know your family, you have a great family. It's because you felt safe and that you felt like finally you could just kind of like let that go and let it down and to come down from that?
I went to a place that I knew.
Sure.
I think. And I think that's exactly what it is. In hindsight, at the time, couldn't explain it. Couldn't explain a lot of things. And one of the weirdest things that morning is one of my very dear friends. We have an event out here every year. She came out last year, and she comes when we play in Broadway Square too. Still a paramedic. I have to explain what an answering machine is to a lot of people, especially when I do talks to trainees. It's like an answering machine is a device with a cassette tape, and it blinks how many messages you have.
What generation are we talking to? Who are we trying to attract to this?
Right.
Yeah.
So I always like doing the advanced classes because it cuts out half the program. But there was a blinking message on there, and she simply said, "I heard what happened. I want to make sure you're okay." And at the time, thought it was the dumbest message. I'm like, why wouldn't I be fine? This is what I do.
Yep.
And I'm not gonna lie, I was a little amped up because the younger guys and women are like, way to go, and the older people are like, you're an idiot, and somewhere in between is the truth, right?
Yeah.
But I questioned it. It's like, what a dumb message. I mean, why wouldn't I be fine? And again, hindsight and some clarity with time and help, it's like that was one of the most profound messages anyone could have ever done. And we need to be bold in these situations and reach out as human beings. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a first responder, it doesn't matter if you're a farm wife, it doesn't matter if you're whatever you do, be a human. This is a human condition. This isn't a profession. Like I said, it's indiscriminate.
Absolutely. I feel even as humans, when we go through trauma, we internalize it, right? So like on the outside, like, nope, I'm fine. Everything is fine. Like I went to work, I went on with my life, I continue to do everything normally, but inside, like, it's almost like when, the cold front meets the warm front in a tornado, right? So like, what is going to be the trigger? Like, what is going to happen down the road? Could be a year, it could be 30 years later. Like you said, you smell something that reminds you of it, or something just randomly comes up in conversation and you're like, why did that happen? Why did this come to my mind? It makes me think of, were there any things down the road that happened, whether it was like, with your family or anything else that was like, okay, it's rearing its ugly head and you had to deal with it at that point?
Every day.
Every day?
Every day. Every single day. A work email goes off. I'm like, now what? I mean, that's the first thing that crosses my mind. And you have to learn how to tone that down. You're never going to turn it off. And if somebody tells you can, more power to you. Please tell me, because I can't. I can tone it down, but I had to learn how to do that, and I didn't know. I didn't know what I was becoming. And what I was becoming, I mean, for lack of a better term, was a complete ass. I was very strict. I was very paranoid. The world is a bad place. And if something good happens, I'm preparing for the next 10 bad things, because you will be punished. And is there some truth to that? I don't know, maybe coincidence. But I think it depends on how you view things. And my view was very dark. Didn't want to socialize. I'd last for about, 15 minutes at a social gathering. It's like, I'm done. I'm done. And luckily and unfortunately, my wife adapted to that and was able to read me very well. She's like, yeah, well, we got to go. And she made so many excuses. And the funny thing is, I'm holding in my hand a Monster energy drink. Not promoting Monster energy drinks. But I
You're
bought
welcome to sponsor us, Monster, in case, you know.
if you want.
I'm just going to throw that out there.
But the reason I bought this today is a reminder. I bought one of these. We were sitting, God forbid, in the Walmart on 13th Avenue parking lot, which I refused to go in. But I said, baby, try this energy drink. It's amazing. And she took a drink of it and she goes, that's horrible. And I was pissed at her for a week because she didn't like that was my thought process. Mm-hmm. And I intentionally went to Casey's and bought this morning. So I remembered to talk about that. And it's an example of how embarrassing almost it is to talk about right now. But in the same token, it needs to be spoken about because that was my mindset. It's like, you have to follow what I'm doing or you could get hurt. And I'm trying to protect you. Mm-hmm. But what you realize later on, and if you're fortunate enough for me to have a strong family, a very loving wife, and a very forgiving son, you learn very quickly of who you were, and you never want to go back. And I don't want to go back to that. And you have to learn how to mitigate this as much as possible. Because with the increased heart rate, with the paranoia, with all of the stuff that's going on, and it's not just from one incident, it's from a conglomeration of things that you couldn't fit into a book because nobody's going to read it because it would be huge. But you're slowly dying. It's killing you. And I'm not just talking about suicide. It's killing your heart. It's killing everything. It's killing your marriage. It's killing your being a parent. It's not helpful. And it attributes, I attribute a lot of this behavior at the time to anxiety of people I even came in contact with. I'm sure I caused them a great deal of anxiety. And people that know me now, it's like, that's not impossible. That'd be impossible. I mean, you're so laid back and chill, and it's like, you would be very surprised. Some of the most people that struggle inside their mind seem to be some of the most laid back, chill people that you'd ever come across.
That does make sense, because a lot of times when you talk about, internally how much you're struggling, and with suicide, we see that so often. They're like, they were the happiest person. Like, they were always smiling. They were always positive and just happy and like go lucky. But like, what is going on internally inside that person, they're able to just hide that. So like this podcast, when we had talked about starting it, that was where we wanted to go. That's right. What we wanted to do. We wanted to inadvertently save lives. Are we qualified? Like, are we doctors? Are we? No, absolutely not. But we're people that have survived some pretty awful circumstances. And I think we have grown a strong mindset. And I think talking to people in all walks of life and like understanding, that we're not perfect and we never will be. So every single day we have to get up and tell our mindset, like, the normal thing that would normally be overstimulating for somebody and would put you over the edge, you have to say, I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to be better than I was yesterday. Whether it's you snapped at your kid or you're in traffic and, the traffic pissed you off because it's construction season in, Minnesota and North Dakota. You're trying to get to work. Like, you can choose what has power over you mentally every single day. And so if we can create that mindset to get us into a better spot, like, how do we do that? Like, what are the steps? And I think we had talked about with the podcast, we wanted to provide solutions for people. Mm-hmm. We don't want to just sit here and yap, oh, yay, look at me. Like, I did this and we overcame that. We want to be able to give people steps, something that they can actively look at and utilize to better themselves in their life, which is why we have the Facebook group, which is a great resource. We'll post lots of things in there. As we get going with this, we hope to have a website someday. That would be great to have links and resources to do that. when I was researching for this episode, I had looked up a couple of different things, and the one thing I looked up was, most people like unintentionally just do it. Like if you have a strong mindset and you have like an ability to achieve, they're naturally just go through all of these steps in order to get to the next level. Are they ever truly achieving that next level? I don't think so. Like you said, I think it's every single day you have to actively do it. But the first thing that I saw was in order to overcome an obstacle in life, there's a bunch of like internal and external things that you can do. But the first thing that you need to do is acknowledging the obstacle. So just like in AA or alcoholism or anything in life, you have to acknowledge that you're the problem. Which brings me to my next thing, the victim mentality. Like, how do you think, I know you said before that people that have the victim mentality like infuriate you. And I think that's because you're a doer, you're an achiever. Yeah. And so like somebody who's like, oh, this happened to me and I'm in this spot and I don't know how to get out of it. And everyone gives them like 1,000 solutions. But then the next day they're like posting again, like, help me. Like, I don't know what, like.
It's like that Facebook post where somebody's in the emergency room. This drives me nuts, by the way. And if it doesn't, we can't be friends. They post a picture of them laying in a hospital bed saying, don't want to really get into it right now, but just want your prayers or something like that. It's like, don't post that crap. Don't post it. It's like, what, you had a kidney stone. Yeah, that's painful. But this isn't the Real Housewives. If there's something going on and you need help, say it.
Yep.
And it's funny you bring this up. It's not. I remember the day where I was done. I will never forget the day I was done because I was at a place where I didn't want to be and I was having a bad day. And it was about a 4.5 hour drive home. And I unloaded on my wife. I go, this is where I'm at. I don't feel anything. I'm not happy. I'm not sad. I feel nothing. I am numb. And I did. I think, we stopped at Dairy Queen because I'm fat and I got to have ice cream. But other than that.
Always makes it better.
Yeah, well, that M&M Blizzard is amazing. But we decided that one day, it's like, we need to figure out what this is because we didn't know. Mm-hmm. And you may have a day like that. I was fortunate to have a day like that. I felt a little better after doing that and just finally saying it. She already knew it. And so I made an appointment to go in. And I think an important thing here is a diagnosis from a medical professional. Get a diagnosis. And you'll be surprised. You're probably going to get diagnosed with something, especially if these behaviors are going on. And I went in there and I was ready to manipulate said therapist. Right.
Because you're trained for that.
And if you ever meet my wife, one of her nicknames is the Badger. I was ready to start my manipulative process. She came with me, and the finger went up, the index finger.
Yep.
And she did all the talking.
Oh, interesting.
And I just sat there. And I'm man enough to admit, listening to everything that she was saying, and this has been some time, it had been probably 20 years, and I felt this hot, wet thing coming from my eye like a hot bullet. And it was a tear. And I'm like, how embarrassing is this who I am now? I mean, is this what I've become? And I got a diagnosis. And from that point on, it's your responsibility to either be the victim of that diagnosis or fight back.
You can't defeat what you don't face.
100%. You got to know what to fight. And I didn't. And I knew there was, at that point I knew there was something. I was exhausted. I was tired every day. Well, I'd go to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning and be up by 5. Every day. A couple hours of sleep, I'm ready to go. And just stayed as busy as possible.
Then you didn't have to think about it.
Didn't have to think about it.
So that brings to number 2, understanding the root cause. Mm-hmm. So, whether it's therapy, whether it's a friend, whether it is, if you don't talk about it, you can't figure it out. You can't understand why you are the way you are.
Correct.
And like you said, with having your talk at the therapist with your wife, I had a similar moment in my house. I just came home one day and I don't know why I was so mad. I was just raging mad. Like that mad that you just can't control, that you are just, you want to punch something, right? So immediately my kitchen is a mess. So like if the kitchen's a mess, my mind's a mess. I have to get it clean. Like I was just amped up, and that was my sole focus at that point. And my son and my husband were just sitting at the kitchen table, and I just started screaming about the stuff that was in our drawers. Now, mind you, I had contributed to the mess in these drawers. In fact, it was probably my fault to begin with, because like I like things clean on the outside, but then I'm a drawer hoarder. So I'm one of those people that will find you like the most random thing in the drawer.
You may need it.
Yeah, I might need it someday. There's a random screw, like we're going to keep that. And so I took everything out of the drawers and I dumped it all over the floors, and I started screaming at them to pick it up and put it all away. And I just started tirading, running around the house. I didn't cry. I wasn't like sad or anything, and I wasn't even thinking about what I was doing. And after it happened, I went to bed. I didn't think anything of it. I woke up the next day. I was like, okay, I'm in a better mood. Like, you know, and then I kind of, you know, hopped out in the living room and did what we do when we have a fit, right? Like you say like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to like go off or, you know, do anything like that. But the next night I was super overstimulated again from work, and like it was just the cycle just kept repeating. And I got home and my son didn't want to brush his teeth. And he went in his room and he grabbed his drawers and he dumped a bunch of things out, and he started screaming. And then he started throwing things, throwing his books. And that was the moment when I saw myself. And I just started bawling. I'm like, what did I do? Like, what did I create? Like, is this how I'm modeling myself to my kid? And that was when my husband was like, something is not right with you. Like, I don't know what it is. I don't know what's causing it, but like, you've been like this for a while, and I didn't even know. And so, yeah, I had to go to therapy, and I had to like define what was going on with me, because I didn't know, you know, I didn't know, right. Is it hormones? Is it nothing? This is normal. That was normal for me to feel that turmoil. And I thought I was doing a damn good job of hiding how turmoil I had in my life and how I was dealing with it. But
well, we all do.
You know, I was drinking too much. I was doing things to try to like overcompensate for how I was feeling. But in my head, I was fine. And so using that and brings you to number 3. You have to accept what you can't control. Because we want to control that beast, and we keep saying, nope, it's fine, but other people don't view it as fine, which is why I think when your wife was explaining it, it really resonated with me, because of how my husband viewed me versus your wife viewing you, of how we weren't handling it well, and we thought we were.
I think that is probably the most pure form of truth.
Absolutely.
And, you know, think of the courage it took your husband and my wife to do that.
Right.
But it also comes to the point where it's like they're at that point where they're willing to do that.
And yeah, exactly. So like right now, right before our next piece that I'm going to talk about, this is where it turns into either you have a victim mentality, where I could have said, when my husband said that, I could have said, no, it's because you don't do this and you don't do that for me, and I'm having to clean the house and look at the drawers. You know, I could have blamed it on him. That's my victim mentality. But instead, I had to look at myself internally and be like, how can I do my part to make this better? And that brings to number 4, is creating that plan of action. If you do not create a plan of action, you are constantly going to be labeling yourself as a victim, and you need to change your mindset.
You said the cycle, and that's exactly what it is. And not only is it cyclical, you know, what's the definition of insanity? Trying to do the same thing over and over and expect change? Well, not only, for me anyway, is it cyclical, it would build and build and build. So yeah, the cycle was going, but it was like this oblong wheel where it would get heavier and heavier at the top until it would spill over, and you'd dump the drawers out, or you know, have, you know, myself have a fit over Monster Energy drinks. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous to talk about right now. But if you do have that victim mentality, that's all that's going to happen. And this whole podcast, I'm a full supporter, and I've said this to you many times, full supporter of awareness. We need to keep awareness. Awareness is an important part. But what about action? There's a lot of awareness. We want this to be action. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. Action. And having people that will be joining us in the future are action people. It's
Absolutely.
like, this is the path they took, and it's going to be different than mine. It's going to be different than yours. But it worked for them. And the action that I'm looking for is like, hey, these are people that survived this, and this is how they did it, and that may work for you. My path may not work for you. It may not.
Right.
It may not. I was very lucky. Very, very lucky. And I attribute a lot of it to, I'm a veteran, so I had the Veterans Administration. And just so people know, in Fargo, North Dakota, the veteran, I think their mental health unit is rated number 1 in the nation for the VA, and they care. They do. They're amazing people there. Amazing. And they saved me. I mean, they saved me, and they got me back. Am I the same way I was? No, I'm not. No, I am not. I'm better. I feel better. And when Angie and I, my wife, go to Minneapolis and speak at this nonprofit for veterans healing from things like this and getting back on their feet, that's one of the, I was surprised she actually talks publicly. She said she'd never do it, but she does. And it started because
She'd be so good at it.
Somebody pissed her off is what happened. So she chimed in, and now she likes it. But she said something. She said 2 things. The first thing was, you'll never be the same as you are. You'll be better. And she's right, because you've learned now. You've identified something, and you've learned, and you've fought it, and you're winning, and you will fight it every day. There's no cure for it, but you will get better every day, and life will be even better because you'll appreciate things more. The other thing is, when I tell my story to these veterans, it helps me. But after, I don't know, the 50th time doing it, she finally listened to it, and she goes, "You're missing a huge part." And I'm like, "What is that?" She goes, "The middle." I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And she goes, "The biggest part of you was you gave up everything. You gave up every hobby you had. You gave up your music. You gave up everything. You sold every instrument that you had except for the one your dad gave you. You quit drumming. You quit playing guitar. You quit playing bass. You quit singing. You quit doing everything. You don't play baseball anymore. You don't hunt. You don't fish. And you have your work family. You have your home family. And then you just forgot your whole identity in the middle."
Right.
And then I got it. And that became a huge part of this. And that seems to be a huge common denominator with people. It's like, all you do is things to survive. And you have no identity left. And I found that identity. And I went a little crazy with it, as you can probably attribute to.
I think we both do.
Yeah.
A little bit.
I went a little crazy with the instrument thing. But I have the support. And because the family knows it's very important to me. And jack of all trades, master of none. But I love the challenge. And I will tell you, the whole music thing, it's like one of the first things that's never gotten old for me. It doesn't bore me. You can always do something more. You can always create. You can write. You can do it. And that whole middle thing really did change my life. And she just came up with that. And it's like, wow, that is exactly right.
Well, she saw you. You know, she understood that you needed that. And when you speak about music, you run the nonprofit Operation Check 6, right? Which
Correct.
does provides veterans a way to express their PTSD and their emotions, where they can write music and they can perform it, which is so admirable. Like, most people don't think about music being a way of releasing that tension, but it 100% is. I mean, I'm a musician myself, so I understand, sometimes, I remember this even being as a kid. I would have a really hard day at school, and I'd have a rough afternoon, and I'd fight with my parents when I got home. I think I was maybe 10 years old. I would slam the door to my piano room, and I would just go in there and I would play for a half an hour, and I'd just plunk out the keys and sing a song. And then when I came out, I was a different person. You know, it's a way to release.
Yeah, and it's effective for me. It may not work for everybody like it worked for you and I, but look at us now, both 21 years old, no, a little bit older. We're still doing it.
Times two.
It's like it's something that I keep revisiting. You know, I keep revisiting it. Now I've got this marriage to music that I'm never giving up, and I wouldn't give it up for anything. And we have our secret sound guy in the back here, Dave Doc, and
Super Dave.
It actually was really profound for me when we did one of our first events for the nonprofit out here, because all of a sudden my parents were here, Dave was here, his son and his daughter were here, and here we are all sitting around a table, and brought this whole family together in that one instant. And Dave and I had lived in separate states for a while, and once again, music. This common denominator. That's why it's so profound for me. Now, not everybody professes to be a musician. You don't need to be. I mean, find something. Find something. Don't be that victim. Find something and stick with it. You have to.
Even if you have, there are so many people that have excuses or, you know, say, well, I don't have a strong family support system like Dan, or I don't have, you know, all of these things. Music is non-discriminative, you know, like find something that doesn't cost you a ton of money. You don't have to go to a therapist. You should. I mean, that's the right thing to do. Is it expensive? Yes. There are other ways to do it. There are podcasts, there are ChatGPT, there's, you know, all of these resources in the world now at your fingertips to figure it out, right? And to utilize music. But the one thing you have to do is take action to get that support. And if you don't have a lot of external support, you need to learn how to change your mindset to give yourself that support, because nobody's coming to save you.
You need to find your people. Another thing my wife said, find your people.
Yep.
It took me a long time. I found my people. I've got 3 of them sitting in the room right now. I found my people, and there's not a lot of them. It's a very small group. But it's my group. It's now my family, and it's important to have that, because it's hard to trust, first of all, but secondly, there's this common denominator with people that have been through something, like most have, but especially trauma survivors. And I'm not talking about a bond like victim offender. I'm talking about a nexus. Like, I could sit in that lobby of the VA and watch young soldiers coming in and say, that one need to go up to the 4th floor and talk to somebody. You can just see the light is dim behind their eyes.
Right.
And you have a magical ability where people will just sit down right next to you and start telling their life story, which is amazing. I know some people like that. And I've had it happen to me too. But I have to work at it, and I'm not going to say drag it out of people, but this helps, because, you know, being able to share a story, it's like, hey, you're not alone. You are not alone. The feelings that you're feeling right now, and the things that are going on in your life, you do have some control over it. You can have control over it. And do you need to go to therapy? I recommend it. What do you have to lose? I mean, when you get sick, do you take medication? It's no different. We have to take care of our mental health. It's very real, and it's been real. And it may help explain maybe why your grandparents acted the way they did.
Right.
You know, why was Grandpa so mad all the time? You know, he's always ticked off, because I had one really chill grandpa, and I had one that was very high strung. And the one that was high strung would have heart attacks, and the other one, you never knew where he was going to show up, but then he'd do something amazing, like sit down at the piano and start playing the piano, and nobody knew he could do it. That's just the way he was. He was amazing. I aspired to be him. By the way, he's an amazing guy. But again, I don't want to get stuck on the victim thing, but either you're going to be a victim, or you're going to do something about it. And you are a victim, but you don't have to stay there.
Right.
Don't stay there, because you can only tread water for so long.
We want to create a family of listeners, like people and like mind, right? So the whole deal with this podcast is, some people view trauma differently, right? So you have trauma that is you can have significant. We're not saying that someone's trauma is more than someone else's.
Not at all.
So it could be trauma in the effect of like you had a kid. Like that could be traumatic for somebody.
Of course it can.
It could be traumatic just to wake up in the morning because you just didn't want to wake up. You were just hoping that night when you went to bed that your eyes were not going to open the next day. That's traumatic for somebody. So we don't ever want to label, trauma as, something related to a very huge event. The point of the podcast is talking to people in all walks of trauma and all walks of life, and what actions are we going to take to get to the next point. So I look forward to keep doing this and to keep talking about it. And then hopefully, as we end this intro podcast, we're going to be able to look at having some guests in the next round to be able to dive a little deeper into some of the different situations that people deal with.
Not only guests from career paths that you probably wouldn't imagine, of veterinarians, maybe someone who is an entrepreneur. It's important to understand, to not compare. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a shout out to give.
Sure.
I hate using that word shout out.
Well, you just
it's like
did. Too late.
Wheelhouse. I don't like that one either, but I'm gonna. Hey, how about the band Chemical Candy with the intro?
Okay, now we're tooting our own horn.
I never said it was us, but the bass player is very handsome. So much fun. So much to do on this, and there are many resources, especially on the veteran side. But it's not limited. You don't need to be a veteran. You don't need to be a first responder to be affected by trauma. You can be anyone. Like I said, it doesn't care who you are. And one quote I live by, and it's part of my presentation that I give, is by Friedrich Nietzsche. And just to paraphrase it, it's like, if you stare at the darkness, be very, very careful, because it's very easy to slip into that darkness, and it's hard to get back to the other side. So be very, very wary. Whether you survived a natural disaster, sexual trauma, anything like that, be very, very wary, because it's very easy to slip downward, and it's very hard to climb back up, and sometimes we need some help. I needed help, and I got it, and here we are.
Which is amazing. It's an amazing story, and to where you've come today. So if we could encourage people that are listening to this to please, click on like and follow us on no matter where you're listening to this, and go on our Facebook group, the Kiss My Chaos podcast.
Kiss My Chaos.
And add that also. We want to be able to continue doing this for people, because I think we're both very much empathetic, and we want to keep this rolling. So if you guys want to, please like us and follow us. We'd appreciate that.
Amen, girl.
Woo-hoo!
You've been listening to the Kiss My Chaos podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we speak with some of the most intriguing people about their journey from trauma to triumph. If you find yourself in mental crisis, please seek professional medical help immediately.